Here's a tune. Nice air. It's called the Nameless Lassie, and to his many other accomplishments, I add the one of music, because Sir William Marshall was the composer of that fine air. From his childhood through his teenage years, he learned to play the fiddle to a very high level indeed. He played Scots tunes, all sorts of Scots tunes, and people greatly admired his playing, but he also wrote them: jigs, reels, chassepes, airs, the occasional march, perhaps a hornpipe. His music got the reputation of being a little bit tricky to play. In fact, once a friend said, "Wally, your music's grand, I love your tunes, but they're awfully difficult. Why do you make them so hard to play?" And Marshall allegedly replied, "My music is as it has to be. It is not for bunglers, so you have to learn how to play it." And the difficulty lies in the fact that he liked using flat keys with a lot of flats in the key signature. Let me explain why this is tricky for a violinist. Here are the four open strings: G, D, A, and E. Sounds slightly flat, that is E anyway. Right, if I begin to play the scale of G major, it goes like this. And the D is on an open string. I'm not touching the string when I play it. But if I put in a D flat, watch what happens. Now, I have to use that little pinky, the weakest, smallest, least agile of the fingers. Poor little thing. It's the one that has to play it. Same with D major. Put in an A flat. And so on. Using that finger, particularly in fast music, is a little bit tricky, and that's why Marshall's music got that kind of reputation. I'm going to play, just as an illustration, a very fine strathspey by Marshall called Sir Charles Forbes of New and Eating Lassie, and this is in 4 flats. Look at the little finger; it'll be kept quite busy, probably be very tired at the end. Charles Forbes of Eating Lassie. William Marshall had a distinguished contemporary, a little bit older than he was, in fact 21 years older, a generation older. And this was Neil Gow, the most famous of all Scottish fiddle composers. Neil Gow, who was the Duke of Athol's fiddler and lived down beside Burnham in a little place called Inver. Marshall admired him greatly. I don't think they ever met, but he wrote a strathspey for Gow called Mr. Marshall's Compliments to Neil Gow, and here it is, a fine, bold piece. William Marshall's compliments to Neil Gow. One of Marshall's duties as the house steward at Castle Gordon was to arrange visits, not just to look after day-to-day life in the castle, but to arrange visits. And the visits were often to Edinburgh, particularly for the Duchess, who'd been brought up in Edinburgh and was very, very fond of the city. She had many friends there. She went down quite often. Marshall had to arrange the whole thing. He had to arrange transport. He had to arrange overnight stays, because there would be some on a long journey like that. He had to arrange what happened when they got there. And he had to arrange the soirees that she loved to have for her friends and her relatives down there, and also for distinguished men of the city, and women, I suppose, too, but mostly men in those days. Anyway, here's a picture to have a look at. And you may see that the guest at that soiree on the 14th of May, 1786, is Robert Burns. He's reading a poem called A Winter Night, and there are seated judges, surgeons, learned professors, some noble people of differing degrees, and the Duchess to the right, of course, who has commanded the whole thing, but the thing was organised by William Marshall. This is the bill of fare that Marshall had to provide. He had to provide for transportation of 14 loads of tables, 14, from the assembly rooms, and that was £9 1 and 11pence. He had to pay John Fortune, grocer and purveyor, for 8 bottles of champagne, £4 4 shillings, 4 dishes of boar's brawn, yuck, 8 shillings, and 4 dishes of fruit jellies, which for some reason don't have a price at all. But the total was £13, 13 and 11pence, and Marshall had to arrange for all that. Of course, the Duchess paid for it, but Marshall made the arrangements. When the Duke was in Edinburgh, it was his pleasure and delight to climb Arthur's Seat. And he climbed Arthur's Seat with an old friend, usually. The old friend was a professor, Professor Andrew Duncan, the professor of the theory of medicine at the University of Edinburgh. Rather charmingly, when the good professor was 80 years old, he was much older than the Duke, when he was 80 years old, he composed a little poem which he read to the Duke on the summit of Arthur's Seat. He must have been a healthy old man. Here's the poem. Once more, dear Duke, my duty to fulfill, I've reached the summit of this lofty hill, to thank my God for all his blessings given, and by my prayers to aid my way to heaven. Long may your grace enjoy the same delight, till to a better world we take our flight. So that, you know, if you want to aid your way to heaven, the thing to do is to climb Arthur's Seat and say some appropriate words when you get to the top. William Marshall may or may not have climbed with them, I don't know whether he did, but he would certainly be there at the time. He would have organised the visit. And he wrote a reel called Arthur's Seat, and this is it. Arthur's Seat. Well, we've reached the end, really, of this video, which just introduces William Marshall's music. But I'd like to end with another strathspey, and one that I think is entirely fitting for this opening musical video. It's called The Duke of Gordon's Strathspey. And the Duke of Gordon, Alexander the fourth Duke of Gordon, was so important in William Marshall's life that I think this is a good tune to end with. It comes from Marshall's first book of Scots tunes, published in 1781, and here it is.